Welcome to the allocation process guidance video for Allocation Round 6. In this guidance video, we will cover the auction-related processes that are run by the delivery body in an allocation round. In this guidance video, we will cover some of the Allocation Round 6 allocation and auction rules, the valuation formula, and how we calculate individual applications' budget impact, the sealed bid submission process, the different auction types, and then a walkthrough of some interactive auction scenarios to help showcase how the auction works on a basic level. Please do note that this video has been recorded using the Allocation Round 6 draft allocation framework. This slide demonstrates what is involved in the later stages of the allocation round, starting with the valuation performed by the delivery body, then the sealed bid submission window from applicants, and finally the running of the auction and releasing of the results. In the bidding window, a sealed bid process is used to ensure that the auction is competitive and fair for all participating projects. Developers submit their strike price bid, which is the amount of money they need to receive for each megawatt hour of electricity generated. The strike price bid is confidential, and only the developer and the delivery body know what has been bid. In the auction, the delivery body will then evaluate the bids against the rules stated in the allocation framework for Allocation Round 6 and identify the clearing price of the auction. Bids are allocated up to the point where a constraint, be that a megawatt or a pound, is exceeded, and therefore the auction can no longer continue. The team will be on hand to assist you with these activities, predominantly around the sealed bid submission process. This next slide shows the key auction-related rules from the allocation framework. The rules shown on screen cover the process from the auction determination, the sealed bid submission process, and then how the auction will actually run, and how bids will be assessed against the parameters stated on the budget notice. This is just a helpful placeholder for applicants to come back to. We would encourage you to familiarise yourselves with these rules from the allocation framework if you will be participating in the allocation round. So starting with the valuation process. The valuation process is used to value all qualifying applications and to determine if and what type of auction is required. The valuation action is performed in the CfD portal and gets shared securely with the Secretary of State. This information does not become public or get shared with applicants. The boxes on screen show what goes into the valuation formula and subsequent budget impact calculation for each individual project. The valuation formula will be confirmed in Schedule 2 of the final allocation framework. The formula is also used in the auction when determining the budget impact of bids in the auction. However, the strike price bid of the applicant will be used as opposed to the administrative strike price as shown on the screen now. Next, we're going to move on to the topic of sealed bids and cover the submission process and concept of flexible bids. Where the valuation process of all qualifying applicants determines that an auction is necessary, applicants will then be invited to submit sealed bids via the EMR delivery body portal, the same place as the application was submitted. We will be publishing an updated sealed bid guidance document and video to demonstrate this process in more detail and to cover each of the validation rules that are in the allocation framework. This proved to be really helpful for applicants in Allocation Round 5, and therefore we have updated the content again for this round. This document and video will be live before the round opens for applications in March 2024. However, some of the basics to cover now are: each sealed bid form must contain the applicant's proposed strike price in pound per megawatt hour and converted to 2012 values, the capacity of the CfD unit in megawatts, and if a solar PV application, please provide the megawatt AC capacity, and then finally the applicant's target dates, so the target commissioning window start date and the target commissioning date. The image on the screen indicates how the system looks for entering each bid. Applicants can submit up to a maximum of 4 bids in total, with no more than 2 in the same delivery year. If an applicant does not submit a sealed bid, then they will be assigned a single default bid with the strike price as the administrative strike price for the technology type, as well as the original application values for the megawatts and the target dates. From the seal bid process, we will now briefly address the basics of flexible bids and interleaving, and how the bids interact with each other in the auction process. We are covering this topic now as we have some interactive examples at the end of this guidance video, which will cover the basics of flexible bids and interleaving. As we have mentioned, applicants have the option to submit more than one sealed bid for an application. The additional bids then become known as flexible bids. Applicants may submit up to 4 bids in total, with a maximum of 2 per delivery year. Flexible bids or interleaving then comes into play when a bid causes any applicable pot or overall capacity cap, or monetary pot or budget to be exceeded by the cumulative value of the relevant qualifying applications in the auction. The auction would then close unless there are flexible bids in relation to a qualifying application present in the auction bid stack. The interleaving bid process is as follows. In step 1, the auction system would look for the next flexible bid from the same applicant, which caused the breaching bid, and will attempt to allocate it, along with any other bids from other projects that lie between the flexible bid and the original breaching bid. It could be that the next bid in the stack is the applicant's next flexible bid, therefore no interleaving loop is triggered. In step 2, if any bids in the interleaving loop or the next flexible bid cannot be allocated within the capacity or budget caps, then interleaving is unsuccessful and the auction will close. In step 3, if all of the interleaving bids under consideration in the interleaving loop can be allocated, along with the applicant's next flexible bid, and this does not cause any caps to be exceeded, being budget or capacity, then interleaving is successful and the auction will continue. We would strongly advise that you familiarise yourselves with the auction rules in the allocation framework, including how interleaving works. This is in order to assist you with your individual bidding strategies for the auction. Now we will look at the applicable auction types for the allocation round. In a contracts for difference allocation round, the auction parameters in the form of the budget notice allows for a minima or maxima to be applied to a technology type. If minimas or maximas are applied in an allocation round, then this could lead to auctions in relation to the minima or maxima only auctions being run as part of the allocation round. Each auction type has a different set of rules, and the references to the allocation framework are shown on the screen now. Once published, the budget notice will state what, if any, constraints are applicable to the allocation round. As the delivery body, we will produce additional guidance specific to the AR6 budget notice and how this could be applied in the auction to fully support applicants throughout this key process. As we don't currently have this information, we're going to move on to show you some generic examples of how the auction works, including flexible bids and interleaving. To close out this guidance video, we will now cover some general examples of the running of the auction. These are general examples to give you an overview of how bids are allocated in the auction, what happens when a bid breaches a constraint in the auction, and when the auction is closed. We will look at examples related to the auction in relation to pots or overall budget, covering successful interleaving and unsuccessful interleaving. In this guidance video, we won't be covering examples of how minima auctions or maxima only auctions could run. We will create some additional examples specific to the Allocation Round 6 budget notice when the parameters are released in March 2024. You can also refer to the Allocation Round 5 materials, which are published on the EMR portal in the Round 5 document area. We covered some of the possible auction scenarios for Allocation Round 5 in relation to the Allocation Round 5 budget notice, and this may be helpful to applicants. So firstly, before we move on to the interactive examples, we will look at unconstrained allocation. In the event that qualifying applications do not lead to a budget breach and/or a capacity breach in the valuation process, then contracts will be will be awarded in a non-competitive fashion, and applicants will be awarded the relevant administrative strike price for the technology type. The chart on screen now shows this example of unconstrained allocation, with the budget impact and the capacity impact not being exceeded. The following 4 examples generated for this guidance video are for illustrative purposes only. They have been developed to support potential applicants with understanding the general principles of the auction. All 4 examples will showcase 2 delivery years and 2 valuation years. Starting with the bid stack, which are all the sealed bids that have been submitted. Bids in this example have been grouped by application, with the colour of the boxes denoting the same application, and for simplicity only shows the strike price and the delivery year. In this example, the monetary pot budget will be 60 million. The pot capacity is 6,000 megawatts, and the delivery years used in this example are 2026-27 and 2027-28. Now starting with our bids for this example. Applications A and D have 4 sealed bids each. Applications B and C have 2 sealed bids each. And applications E and K have submitted 1 sealed bid each. If an applicant does not submit a sealed bid, the applicant will be awarded a default bid using the details provided at the time of application. In this example, application F did not submit a sealed bid, so was assigned a default sealed bid based on the details supplied in the original application. Once all sealed bids have been submitted and the submission window is closed, the system will stack the bids from the lowest price to the highest, regardless of capacity, technology, or target dates. This is known as the bid stack and is the starting point for any auction. The principles we will now follow is that when a new bid is allocated, all previous bids will be uplifted to the newly allocated strike price, apart from those technologies whose admin strike price has already been reached. Importantly, the bid under consideration is only provisionally accepted. We will need to determine that all previously successful bids can be uplifted to the strike price of the currently considered bid. And if this is yes, then the bids are successful and we continue with the auction. Let's jump into our first example. Please note that the valuation of sealed bids in the following examples are for illustrative purposes only. Firstly, we have our bid stack on the left-hand side of the screen, showing all the bids submitted for the applicable pot. These are stacked from the lowest price to the highest price. Secondly, we have our auction stack on the right-hand side of the screen, showing the 2 delivery years, and this will demonstrate how each bid is assessed. In the middle of the screen is the monetary budget profile chart, demonstrating what the budget impact of each individual bid will be, along with the capacity chart showing the 6,000 megawatt constraint. The first bid to be assessed is bid B1, and B1 is in delivery year 2. You can see the individual budget profile on the monetary budget chart and the capacity value on the capacity chart. This bid fits within the constraints. The application is successful, and therefore any other bids from the application, B2, are removed from the bid stack. To showcase this, we have pulled the bid from the stack and lined it out in red. This will no longer be considered, and the auction can continue. The next bid to be assessed is bid D1, and D1 is in delivery year 1. You can see from the charts that it fits within the constraints, being the budget and the capacity. This bid is now provisionally accepted. We will now attempt to uplift application B1 to that of D1, subject to any admin strike prices. In this example, application B1 can be uplifted to 50.23, and this fits in with the budget at the new strike price. The budget impact will increase slightly because application B1 goes through the valuation formula with a higher strike price than before, contributing to a greater budget impact on the budget chart. This is why bid D1 was only provisionally accepted in the first instance. Application D has flexible bids, so we will remove these from the stack as they can no longer be considered, and the auction can now continue. The next bid to be assessed is bid E1, and this is in delivery year 2. You can see from the budget profile chart that it fits within the budget and the capacity. Again, this bid is now provisionally accepted. We will now also uplift application B1 and D1 to that of E1, subject to any admin strike prices. Application B1 and D1 can be uplifted to 55.32, and this fits in with the budget at the new strike price. All bids still fit within the budget profile. Application E has no flexible bids to remove from the bid stack, and therefore the auction now continues. The example follows the same process up to C1. You will see when C1 is accepted, some of the applications have been capped at the technology-specific administrative strike price. They cannot be uplifted beyond this price. The final bid to be assessed is bid F1, and this is in delivery year 1. At this stage, there is still sufficient budget and capacity available in the auction, and when F1 is assessed, you can see from the budget profile it breaches the budget. Application F has no flexible bids, and there are no bids remaining to be assessed. Therefore, at this stage, the auction must close. The final clearing price of the auction is £73.22 per megawatt hour, subject to the ASPs for technologies B, D, E, A, and K. The clearing price is set for the pot regardless of the delivery years. All other bids are now removed, and that's the end of scenario 1. We are now moving on to scenario 2. We're going to continue with the same bid stack, and we're going to start after C1 has been accepted. In this example, we're going to consider F1 with different application parameters, being capacity and strike price bid. You can see F1 now has a bid of 84.13. We assess F1, and it fits within the budget, but breaches the capacity cap. Application F has no flexible bids, and there are no remaining bids to be assessed. In this example, the auction closes in a similar process to scenario 1. This was just to demonstrate that where there are no flexible bids relating to the original sealed bid, which caused the monetary pot or monetary budget, and/or the applicable pot capacity cap or overall capacity cap to be breached, the auction would be closed. Moving on to our third example, where we are looking at interleaving, and in particular, successful interleaving. We will change up the application parameters to showcase this example. And again, we start with the bid stack, the auction stack, the monetary budget profile chart, and the capacity chart. The first bid to be assessed in this example is bid B1, with B1 being in delivery year 2. You can see the budget profile on the monetary budget profile chart and the capacity value on the capacity profile chart. The application is successful, as it fits within the constraints of the pot, and therefore we remove any other bids from this particular application. The next bid to be assessed is bid D1, and D1 is in delivery year 1. You can see from the budget profile, it breaches the budget. And application D does have flexible bids, so we can consider these flexible bids. Applicants may choose to submit flexible bids, and these can be at different capacities to the original application, or the lowest price bid. And in this example, bid D2 has been submitted at a higher strike price, but a lower capacity. Taking bid D2 as the flexible bid, We must then consider E1 and A2 and form an interleaving loop, as the bids are between the breaching bid and the applicant's next flexible bid. E1 and A2 are considered in the loop as they are bids which fall between bid D2. These bids can be successful in the loop with the consideration of D2, and all bids are assessed and cleared at the strike price of 64.666 to ensure these bids fit within the budget profile. These bids can fit within the budget profile at the strike price of bid D2 and therefore are successful. We also uplift bid B1 to the new strike price to ensure these fits within the budget, not clearing beyond the ASP if necessary. The budget profile now shows the uplift, and we remove any other flexible bids from these applications from the bid stack to ensure they're not considered any further in the auction. Following an interleaving process, where there are one or more successful applications, the auction shall continue with the next bid in the stack after the original sealed bid, which breached the monetary pot or monetary budget profile, and or any applicable pot capacity caps or overall capacity caps. The remaining applications left in the auction bid stack are K, C, and F. Next, we will consider K1. K1 is in delivery year 2 and can fit within the monetary budget profile, but it exceeds the capacity cap of 6,000 megawatts. In this case, there are no flexible bids from application K, and we must then therefore close the auction. All other bids will be removed, and the final clearing price of the auction is £64.666 per megawatt. This is set for the pot across both delivery years. This covers a simple example of how flexible bids and the interleaving process can be successful in the auction. And next we will look at unsuccessful interleaving. Moving on to scenario 4, where we'll be looking at unsuccessful interleaving. Again, as always, we start with the bid stack, the auction stack, the monetary budget profile chart, and the capacity chart. We will use the same bid stack, but we will make a few changes and small amendments to the bid stack. Again, please remember, these examples are just for illustrative purposes only. We will continue from the bid stack and start to allocate the projects from the lowest price to the highest, starting with B1. Next, we will consider bid D1, B1 and D1 are successful, and B1 gets uplifted to D1's strike price. This is even though the bids are in different delivery years. Next, we will consider E1. When we consider E1, bid E1 fits within the budget, but it breaches the capacity constraint for the pot. As application E has a flexible bid in E2, we will now form an interleaving loop with E2 at the top of the loop. Firstly, we will assess bid A1. A1 breaches the budget in terms of monetary and capacity. Interleaving is therefore unsuccessful without the consideration of the other bids in the loop, and the auction must close. The interleaving bid under consideration that would cause the monetary pot budget and the pot capacity cap to be exceeded, then that bid is unsuccessful. The interleaving bid under consideration and any other provisionally accepted interleaving bids and the next flexible bid are all confirmed to not have resulted in successful applications. And as the delivery body, we must now close the auction. The pot clearing price is therefore £50.23 per megawatt hour, and this is awarded to applications B and D. This covers a simple example of how flexible bids and the interleaving process can be unsuccessful in the overall auction. This now brings us to the end of the video. In this video, we have covered the valuation and budget impact, sealed bids, the different auction types, and we have covered some auction examples showcasing an auction in relation to the pot and some examples of interleaving being successful and unsuccessful.